Yo, people, welcome back to another episode of the Guitar Power Hour. Our guest today is Eric Anduha. He's a good buddy of mine and actually plays in one of my projects. Also has his own project called Nomenclature. And they're currently romping around Denver. And they have some music online, but I don't know if they've actually released anything official yet. So if you're in the Denver area, you can look them up and catch them live, though. And keep an eye out for any stuff that they end up releasing. Eric is a multi-instrumentalist. He plays a lot of different stuff, and it's one of the things that I've respected him for, not just the fact that he can do that, but he plays all of it really well, too. So let's get to it. We are here with another episode of Guitar Power Hour with Eric Anduha, a musician that I met through a mutual friend at a basement party at Jared's place when they were getting ready to move.
Right.
So it was like
a
their
going
final
away party.
Right.
It was more like a basement dwelling.
Yeah, and it was cool because they had all the instruments set up down there and everything for their band practices. So we jammed, and I was actually jamming on drums, and you just randomly jumped on guitar. And we had not met prior to that, so the first time we ever met was actually via. First time we ever communicated
was through music.
Yeah.
Was through music. I vaguely remember those guitars being very lowly tuned.
Yeah, probably.
Drop C.
Then we talked for like 2-3 hours after that. We talked for a good while, and we were just. So I think at that time you were really just starting like the college stuff, maybe.
No, you that long. It's been so long.
Yeah, long time. Definitely has been going slow but fast at the same time. It's like you look back and you're like, all that shit could have happened already in that amount of time, but then at the same time you're like, wow, it's been that long. Anyway, okay, so like the whole gist is just kind of covering your like process of learning music in general, but more geared towards guitar. But I mean, obviously being the multi-instrumentalist that you are, that's gonna probably tap into other things quite a bit. So in the first place, what was the very first thing you did, like musically oriented, instrument-wise?
Specifically, if I can remember, it was in Sacramento, California. I think I was about 10.
So you were living there?
No, we were visiting.
Okay.
We were visiting my great aunt Roseanne, and this is my mom's side of the family. A lot of them are musicians, so she had like a guitar laying around, and I think like a horn in her house somewhere, and a nice digital piano. I think I was about 10 or 11, and I just remember like really thinking the guitar was cool. Just like, oh, this is just like an old nylon string guitar that had like probably 10-year-old strings on it.
Horrible action, probably.
I don't even remember that far. I just remember like being fascinated with it, and she had like a book, and so I just like picked it up, and I was like, okay, these are neat.
Let's do this.
Yeah, and it was just like, it wasn't even like a toy. I knew what it was supposed to be used for. And like, I kind of just plucked away, and there was that book with it, and it kind of like told you what string names were and stuff, and I was like, oh, neat. And just after like hours of playing with it, and I just like, everyone just left me alone. They're like, oh, there goes Eric off on another tangent of one of his weird things. Like eventually I figured out the secret agent man. That's why, I was playing that earlier, but like just
full
like
circle, man. Yeah, and that's funny because just before we started recording, he was playing that kind of randomly, and then now that
I just thought about that.
Here,
maybe I was thinking about it before the interview. Yeah. No, but I just remember playing that, and just like it took a few more years. I think I was 13 when I finally convinced my parents to get me a guitar, and it was for my 13th birthday. All throughout like 12 years old, I was just like convincing them nonstop, like, I will stick with this. This will be the one thing I will do. I promise I won't give up on it. And so finally I got like an old, like probably cheap black acoustic dreadnought guitar.
Mm-hmm. And this was the first instrument ever? No instruments in school or anything before that? Other than like maybe like doing something in a music class or something?
Like recorders probably in like fucking 7th grade, not even like that. Well, 7th grade, that's when I started playing. But nothing.
That was first thing on your own accord.
Was the guitar. And like I took to it pretty quickly. It just became such a part of everything I did.
And that was 13, you said?
I'm trying to think if it was 13 because it must have been. It was 13.
Yeah.
It was my 13th birthday because it was 2002, and I started playing in band in 8th grade.
Oh, you were doing guitar in band?
Yeah, so I'd played for probably like less than a year by the time I joined band at school. And
was it jazz band then, I imagine?
Yeah, it was like jazz band, just like middle school stuff. And I just remember, you know, it was like I got lessons. I was lucky enough, my parents got me lessons with a really great local guitarist out here in Denver, in Aurora, named Jeremy Barber. You know, music.
I started right away, pretty much.
Yeah, you know, that was like almost immediately started lessons. And, you know, from the start, he was just one of those guys who like realized I wasn't going to be interested in like theory. And he was like, after a couple lessons, he was like, all right, what's some shit you want to learn? Like, what are some songs you like? And I think I was really into like Sum 41 at the time. Yeah. It was like 2002, 2003. So we like learned. Yeah, that was like, I think that was the first song I learned. Yeah. Like first song, not just like messing around on it.
You know, in a weird way, that is kind of an odd riff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And like the weird chromatic thing, but it's just like really bluesy.
Yeah. I remember when I was like teaching that once, and somebody asked to learn it, so I had to figure it out. I'm like, wow, that's just a little different. I mean,
those dudes were like like they actually played some really. If you look back, that the Dave Bash, I think was his name, Baksh. He was like really like that dude was like shreddy.
Really?
He was pretty awesome. They came up with some cool stuff. But so that was like the first real song I learned. I was 13, it's 2002, yeah, and I like joined band when I was in 8th grade, and we played. Man, I even remember the 3 main songs. We played 25 or 6 to 4 by Chicago. Mm-hmm. We did...
Which means you also learned Green Day and Zeppelin and...
Right.
A slew of things at the same time. Yeah.
So many things. But other one was Evil Ways by Santana. And then Edgar Winter. Frankenstein.
Damn.
Frankenstein. Those were like the tunes they made us learn. It was like super, like the teacher was super awesome.
And that's to be a jazz band.
That was the jazz band. Yeah. It was like horns, piano. I was the only guitar player in the band.
And you said that how soon after the lessons?
Less than a year.
Less than a year you started doing the jazz band?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, as far as like, so up before the jazz band started, what did you really cover in the lessons? How did that go?
In the lessons, we just learned songs. You know, we would like get from the back of Guitar World magazine, you know, they had the tabs and the music in the back, you know, we would like dig through those books and stuff, and I would just come and be like, hey, I want to learn this. You know, it was like one time I learned Panama by Van Halen. I don't even remember, like I was really into like classic rock and like punk rock music, you know, I learned Blitzkrieg Bop and stuff like that. Yeah. Of course, everyone.
Well, then in terms of like technique and stuff, like how was that incorporated into the you know, like, because obviously you're going to be playing a song, there's different things you're going to have to know that occur in the song, anything from hammer-ons, pull-offs to just like basic technique like alternate picking and like left hand positioning and pick grip, just whatever. We
would kind of approach it as it was like we addressed it when it was like noticed, when it was something.
Yeah, when it came up in a
you'd be like, hey, so check this out. What they're doing here is, you know, when it would like be pull-offs or hammer-ons, he was like, what they're doing is they're picking this and doing this, and I would like kind of study him doing it, and I'd be like, okay, cool, and I'd go home and just like practice that.
Yeah. And there was never any issue with you kind of being like defined against anything.
No, because I didn't really know anything. I just trusted him. It was just like, okay, that's what I'll do. Like, he was just such an awesome guitar player. It was just like watching him was just like, ooh, you know, every time he'd like, oh, so it's like this, and he'd run a line, and I'd just be like around my head, just circles. And
so you were just so excited about it. It was like anything.
Yeah, it was. I definitely took initiative when I saw something, and it was not even like what I wanted to learn. It was just like, that's new. I want to do that. I want to figure out how to do that. You know, learning how to bend. So it was like whenever I would do something for those first few years I was in lessons, I would have it checked by him. So, you know, it was like I didn't develop any really bad habits. My thumb, maybe. You know, I use my thumb a lot to play a lot of chords and stuff, but
coming over the top of the neck there.
Yeah, you know, which I feel like is kind of like a pretty amateur thing, but I mean, I know so many people who don't really think about it.
Yeah.
It's such a traditional technique
it does limit you eventually. You can get away with it at first. And some people have a legitimate use for it, for sure.
No, there's definitely ways to use your thumb.
And most people aren't using it for that reason. They're just there because that's like more of a natural way to kind of grip.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it. But I mean, I can go both ways. Like, especially after studying so much jazz stuff, after a while you kind of like learn, like, okay, well, there's no way I can voice that chord with my thumb in the way.
Right.
But so things like that. I definitely didn't develop any really nasty habits. you know.
Now, what I'm curious about is there's so many like small things that could go wrong when you know nothing, right?
Yeah.
So how are those things like addressed? Like even things just like staying on the tips of your fingers and staying close to the fret and just general positioning, you know. You said the thumb. Was that something he specifically mentioned to you? Did that stuff, or did you just kind of end up doing it? Or
he kind of
work?
the thumb kind of came about just naturally, I feel like. And then, you know, when he addressed it, it was like, hey man, Jimi Hendrix did it. So I was like, oh, cool. But like other like technique things, the right finger placement, honestly, I can't tell you. It was just kind of like it all just fell into place.
Yeah. So like you just kind of did what you had to do to make it work, and those things the right things ended up happening.
I did what sounded good.
Yeah.
You know, because I knew enough about guitar and like music that I knew what sounds were coming out of the guitar were nice, was something I liked to listen to and I liked to hear, and it didn't like hurt my hand or anything. It didn't like feel awkward. You know, and you know, I'm pretty sure a lot of people say this. It just felt natural in a lot of ways. Yeah. It just like kind of made sense to my hand, you know.
Well, something that should be mentioned is that you are also a teacher now yourself.
Yeah.
For what, violin, guitar, and piano?
Yeah, mostly.
Anything else?
I mean, anything anyone will ask. You know,
sure.
Stringed instruments a lot.
Those are the things you've mostly been doing.
Yeah, stringed instruments, keyboard stuff.
Is most of that guitar, would you say?
It's actually just a good mix.
Yeah.
I have just as many violin students as I do guitar students and a handful of piano students.
So I certainly want to like ask about like the teaching stuff a little more, but just relating back to your earlier times and knowing like what is ideal if you've come so far as a guitar player, and of course with like the college level training and all that stuff, you now know what is the best way to do something, right?
Yeah.
And you know there are ways you can get away with, but maybe it's not the best way. But now looking back on those earlier years, now that you are a teacher yourself, what would you say about some of the things you were doing? Did you have things that you would now critique yourself as if you were your own teacher at the time? Or
if I can go back and kind of coach myself, I think I would really like to convince myself to focus more on theory and knowing how to kind of navigate songs a little bit better, especially getting into like my like mid and later teens.
And theory is a big beast, so what regard were you referring to there?
Just like understanding chords, chord progressions, scales, what scales fit what chords.
Kind of like the theory fundamental stuff.
Yeah, and especially for improvising, especially in jazz, because I mean, like, you know, getting back into like my mid and later teens, I really found a lot of interest in gypsy jazz, Django Reinhardt.
At what age?
About 15, 16.
Oh, that's early to get into that.
Yeah. This is like the progression of my music. It went from just like playing punk rock music to like one of the other kids in my neighborhood whose younger brother I was really good friends with in grade school and middle school was actually a student of Jeremy Barber as well. We like lived in the same neighborhood. We basically grew up together. He's one of my best friends now. I still talk to him like... Yeah. You know,
I had
at least,
thing,
you know, right. You know, they have that one friend, and he like we were just two guitar players. Like this dude, he was I think a couple years older than me, and he like at one point we just like started jamming blues together. He was like, hey, you got to check this Django guy out, Django Reinhardt, and I was like, okay. And so I just remember we would like sit there in like his parents' basement, just like listen to him, just like
easy to be blown away,
drool, like what?
And you weren't even watching it, right?
No, we were just listening.
And then once you watch him play, it's awesome.
Yeah, like the very like I don't even think I'd seen Django Reinhardt play until like a handful of years ago. Yeah, you know, because this is like well before YouTube was popular.
Yeah, YouTube's not your common go-to thing at that time.
Right. You know, this is like the mid 2000s. It was just starting up, but. You know, I really got into gypsy jazz, and this is before I even like got into jazz. And
as a reference, you are now what, 28, 29?
Yes.
both ages at once.
Somewhere around there.
So ultimately we're talking roughly about 14 15 years ago, somewhere around there.
Yeah okay. I'd say more close to like 15.
And like you said, like 2002 2003 something, right?
This is a little later. This was like mid 2000s. This is like when I was a teenager. This is even after my lessons. I'd stopped taking them, and like this is when I was getting into high school. And
which brings up a good point then. So how long did you actually do the lessons for?
I think I did lessons from about 13 to 15.
And what indicated to you, Or maybe there was just what reason did you decide to stop?
It was external factors. It wasn't really me. It was
Yeah.
just kind of like a lot of stuff in my family was going on at the time, and it was just kind of
So you could have easily kept going.
yeah, but it was just like a task for my family at the time. We just had some stuff that was kind of like preventing them from getting me to lessons on time and money things. And
So it really didn't have anything to do with the fact that you didn't want to do lessons.
no, I would have liked to have continued doing lessons, and I would have kept doing them happily, but just outside factors. And I'd gone back, I think after a year or two, and like took another year of lessons. And by the end of high school, I was just kind of like, I was comfortable enough in my playing and what I knew that I could get away with certain things.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's kind of like the later progression. I think later teens, when I stopped doing lessons, is when I started really like viewing music as something a little more important to me. It was always extremely important. I mean, like I said, like throughout my later teen years, there was a lot of family stuff, and I'd get in trouble a lot. One way my mom and dad would punish me is they would like take away my instruments.
Ugh.
And like I just remember like one time they like took away all my guitars and my keyboard, and like I just like went to school and I just like stewed on it all day. Like, how am I gonna get this shit back? What do I say to him? And like I got back, and with like my most like kind of diplomatic tone, I went up and I was like, "Okay, we need to talk." So
kind of effective then.
I think it was. I think they gave it back the next day, but I was like, does this punishment really fit the crime?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, you want to take away a video game, okay, maybe that I could see, but like this is like something that is
healthy, constructive.
Yes, it's healthy. So,
and I think that was like kind of like my argument. It was like it keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me like focused and stuff. And I think after that night they like gave it all back. I just like I like went to school and it was back like in my room, and I was like.
So I want to tap into like the I guess once you started a jazz band, but real quick before we get into that, what were the things that were on your mind when you first started playing, as far as kind of like what did you dream wanting to be able to do one day? Like what was the big vision for the end goal? Clearly probably nothing with what you're doing now in terms of like the college stuff, or at least part of that wasn't.
No, not at all. I like wanted to be like a combination of like Slash and Scott Weiland when I was like 16. They were so cool. That was when Velvet Revolver was big. You remember that?
Yeah. But this, I'm talking about even back when you just started.
When I just
started the lessons, just got your guitar. Yeah. What was the big thing like that you were just super wanting to like? What did you see yourself doing in like 5 or 10 years or whatever once you got good at the guitar?
I mean, honestly, it was still always just wanting to be like the rock star, because I was like, when I started, I was really into Sum 41, and a lot of my friends in 6th grade were really into that too, and we were always talking about starting bands, and it was just kind of like, I'm gonna be a rock star one day. That was like the goal when I was that age.
To you, that meant writing your own music, playing a band, touring, singing, all that stuff, right?
That was kind of it.
And Velvet Revolver was a good kind of like placeholder of what that would look like.
Because I was just always super into Guns N' Roses, because I think that was another one of those bands. Like my guitar teacher showed me, and I was like, these guys are cool. And then like I was like 13, I had a little girlfriend, and I go hang out, and her mom was like really into like early grunge music. I was
okay, maybe you did.
Yeah, I did. No, she was really into grunge. Like
I didn't mean that you didn't have a girlfriend. I just assumed you probably had more than one.
I did.
Yeah.
I mean, later.
Knowing you now.
I it was one at a time.
I find that a little hard to believe, but all right, if you say so.
So back to that, the influences stuff, and that's kind of what kept a lot of my interest in music, and probably still what influences me a lot, because this was 10 years after grunge was even really big, and she like really got me into Stone Temple Pilots.
The girlfriend at the time?
No, her mom.
Oh,
because I would go over, and her mom was like really into music, and she would like, awesome. And she knows I really like music. We were in band together. She played clarinet, and
her
she
mom played clarinet in band.
No, her daughter.
Okay.
And the middle school band we were in. Yeah.
Keeping up.
Stay with it. Jeez, it's so not complicated, is it? I don't know. It is. No, is it? Anyways, we were in band together, and she knew I really liked music. She would like show me Stevie Ray Vaughan videos and like Jimi Hendrix. She had them all on like VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And she would like show me all this stuff. So, in a lot of ways, she was also responsible for a lot of what, I would continue down the line with.
Yeah.
just because not only did I think her mom was really cool, I just like really connected with a lot of that music.
Well, that's an interesting thing then. So you're watching videos of guitar players.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you did you tap into YouTube at all at that point?
No.
Okay. So then
No.
did you feel like watching those videos and actually getting to see what they were doing was something that you kind of were able to draw from?
I still draw from videos of musicians and
Just
guitarists that I
watching them
watched.
and being able to pick up on what they're doing?
Yeah, a lot of like, I feel like now I still do things I like remember seeing them do. Like, I'm not really into him as much now, Stevie Ray Vaughan, but like it was a live performance he did before he died, and just like some of the the guitar acrobatics.
Yeah.
Just like the crazy stuff he was doing. He was like hitting the upper bout of his guitar to get like feedback and stuff, and like just a lot of his mannerisms and stuff, except for the ugly faces. I still like catch myself doing some of that stuff, or like obviously Jimi Hendrix.
Every day, all the time, yeah.
Yeah, just like really.
You're doing the ugly face right now.
No, that's natural. It's the lack of mustache. Right?
Oh, so this is not intentional.
No.
Okay.
It's very unfortunate.
Gotcha.
I have resting shit face.
Okay, sorry about that. That's yeah.
But so getting back into like more of the technical aspects of playing, more towards the later part of my life. This is when I started understanding things. I took a music theory class in high school, my freshman year.
Okay.
And that was like my first exposure to like.
Which, by the way, when you first got started with guitar, that was probably 7th or 8th grade, somewhere around there?
Yeah, so it was seventh grade I got started on guitar, and then by 9th grade
you were in jazz band.
8th grade I was in jazz band, and then in high school, first year high school, so that was like, it was literally just like a year by year succession. Right. And then I took that theory, and that was like really like
good,
groundbreaking for me.
In a good way.
In a really good way, because it was like, I knew so much about my instrument already, and I like tried to audition to get into Denver School of the Arts, which is, in Denver, it's like the school where high school kids go for music and arts and things like that.
I've known a few people that go in there.
Yeah, and when I went to audition, they were like, you don't really need a guitarist like you know. So I was like, oh, because I was still into rock music and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And so I didn't get in, and I auditioned for the band at the high school I went, George Washington High School, and they, kind of gave me this.
Oh, GW.
Thing. Yeah, I went to GW.
Oh.
Yeah. But.
This is from Big.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks.
Oh.
He's in the interview.
Yeah.
Oh, GW.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's really fun. I'm going to start doing that to people now. Anyways, so that theory class, it was like a year-long, 2-semester-long course.
Your own general assessment of where your skills were at that time, and how would you kind of like describe that to somebody?
I was competent. I was a competent musician. I can like play things pretty well, and I was very. I'll say this: I was musical, and back 5 years ago when someone had said that to me, I was like,
well, you always had that inclination, it seems, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then by that time, what would you say are examples of your skill and your ability at that time after those 2 years, roughly?
After 2 years, I
playing the Guns N' Roses stuff.
I was playing Guns N' Roses. I can play. Some good two-hand tapping stuff.
Oh, really?
I had a really good sense of rhythm. I could play blues pretty well. I had a pretty good sense of music.
Improvising.
A lot of my music was improvising, and like written stuff I would write myself, learning other songs, like fairly simple songs.
So then, how did the jazz band stuff, obviously playing with people is always great, no matter what, but how did that specifically, or in what ways did that affect your ability level? Like, looking back on it, what did you ultimately gain from it?
What that gave me was the experience in playing ensemble music and how to play with other people. Yeah. Because after that, I never really played in any bands or anything, except for with my other friend who played guitar. I think we, probably jammed with a couple of friends from his high school, but nothing really serious. But that first experience in jazz band really kind of gave me a sense of what it's like to blend into an ensemble setting.
So what did you notice, like skill-wise, that you were doing better at? Getting more consistent with your playing, or doing harder things that you learned that you had not done previously? What would you say?
I was definitely, in my teen years in high school, showing off a lot more. Because I got good enough that it was like impressive. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was impressive.
So the jazz band did not continue into high school then?
No. I tried to audition for, I don't even know if we had a jazz band at George Washington at the time. I think it was just like,
That'd be unusual.
Maybe it was orchestra or something. It was a really small music program. But, you know, the jazz band stuff didn't stay. I just kind of like went my own way, and I just like realized that my playing was enough to be impressive. And so I would kind of use it, and I was like really showy. You like use it to show off to the girls and stuff. And like, it was like, definitely took advantage of that when I was like 16. I definitely used it. It was definitely at that point a lot of image, but there was still a lot of content behind my playing that was like, oh, that kid can actually kind of play.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember one time I went to Hawaii when my brother was going to college out there. We dropped him off. You know, we went to like go say our byes when he was going to college for his first year, and like I met his roommate. And he was like this older dude who'd studied classical guitar and stuff like that. And, you know, he had a couple of guitars with him. And he was like, oh, your brother said you play. And I was like, yeah, I play some stuff. He was like, oh, well, what do you want to do? I was like, we do some 12-bar blues. I think I was like 13.
Nice.
I was just going into high school. So, yeah, I was 13. And that was the first year, the second year. No, that was like within the first year I was playing guitar. And he was like, all right, well, let's see what you got. And so I was like playing, and I just remember like doing some stuff, and he just like kind of like looked at me weird, like, how long have you been playing?
Yeah.
It was like, you know, about like a year, maybe a year and a half at that point. He was like, so it must have been 14, sorry. Yeah, just about to be 14, because that was 2003. But I just remember like him reacting really like shocked.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wasn't a
Clearly
terrible.
was a big moment for you. It stuck with you to now.
Oh, he didn't say anything to me.
But
he was
feel
looking like it. But my brother told me
sense it.
later. He was like, so like my roommate was like really impressed with you, and I was like, okay, cool, all right.
Maybe I should keep doing this.
Yeah, and it was just like I was gonna keep doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Like music has always been an underlying fact. It was such, like I said, later in life it became a real big image thing, and that's when I really did think like, yeah, I'm gonna be a fucking rock star. Like it really became part of my image. You know, I started like drinking.
Identity.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
It really was. Like I really felt like I was a rock star in high school. Because I was like definitely a bad kid. I was like getting in trouble with the law. I was like drinking and smoking pot and stuff. Sorry,
Eric
kids who are listening. Being bad isn't cool, but I thought I was being cool.
Yeah.
You know, I was like a cool like guitar player. I was like able to play, and I was just like, I didn't really give a shit about a lot of things except for how cool I looked. But the playing was always there. Yeah, not much has changed. Now I'm just a lot more subtle with it. But like content playing wise, after like, so back to the theory class, it really did. That's when I kind of understood more about scales and chords and things like that, and how important they were. And it really did inform my playing. Like I started, you know, using a lot more seventh chords. I started like learning how to apply scales to certain chords, and like how chord progressions worked, and like, oh, okay, so we analyze things in terms of Roman numerals and things like that, and how to like kind of communicate that with other musicians. So there was a lot more context behind my playing that was more than just sounding good.
Yeah,
it was like I kind of understood there were certain things that sounded good, and I was like, oh, I can just move this here. I can transpose this whole thing. It was just so important. And like, I took that 1 year of music theory in high school, and it rode me all the way up until like my early 20s learning violin.
Yeah. And at that point, guitar was still the only instrument?
No, I'd borrowed a keyboard from one of my aunts because I really started getting into classic rock, and The Who was really big on my mind a lot, especially Who's Next. And Pete Townshend used a lot of synthesizers on that album. And one that struck me really, really hard was Won't Get Fooled Again.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it was basically an organ through like an LFO thing, and it was like just a pulsing, you know, I'm sure you know. Yeah.
Patented thing.
And I figured out how to recreate that because I had like this little effects processor pedal that had a tremolo effect on it, and it can do that choppy tremolo. So I'd learned if you plug it into that and then plug that into my amp, I can make that sound. Yeah. So I can like make the sound from Won't Get Fooled Again.
And that's like 16, you said?
Yeah, that was about 16,
so
16, 15.
Picking up the keyboard. And
yeah, you know, and I just, everything and it was again. What's that?
That was just completely on your own, like self-teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just about to say, like, that was informed because of the theory class.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, oh, these notes are all the same.
Right.
So I would take everything I could learn on guitar and I would try to figure out how to do it on the keyboard, which is, probably backwards from what most people do. Most people, can probably convey those same things from keyboard to guitar a little easier than, the other way around. But thanks to like that theory class, it was just so much easier to be like, oh, okay, F sharp, all these things, like all these notes. I was like, neat.
And that's kind of unusual for the guitar player at that age to be really getting into the theory stuff, because usually in those theory classes, it's like the high school band kids.
Yeah.
So that's a little different.
It was just all on my own accord.
Yeah.
Like I saw it was available and I was like, that is what I'm doing.
I think a lot of guitar players, at least initially and some ongoing, avoid theory. Almost, intentionally, almost like out of like a fear of like, this is going to mess up my playing or hurt my playing, but it really opens doors.
I was the only guitar player in that class.
That doesn't surprise me.
And then it got canceled after that year. So it was
The
really
class got canceled?
Music theory got canceled.
That's weird.
Yeah. Denver Public Schools isn't really hot on extracurricular programs.
Which I think's changed now, though, it seems.
It's a little bit better. It's
at least the surrounding areas, like they have orchestras and bands.
Surrounding area, DPS maybe like East High School and maybe DSA and maybe a handful of other schools, but Denver's not always really known for like its attention to the arts. They're more worried about keeping schools open.
Well, I'm curious to know during that period, what was practicing like for you? How would you approach that? What's the time that you put in? I imagine it was a lot, but
this is like the one thing I wish I could be like I used to be with practice. I cannot even begin to imagine how many countless hours I would just spend playing and writing songs and just like trying to learn music.
You're doing a lot of writing too.
I was doing everything. I was trying to compose music. I was trying to play about. The only thing I really wasn't doing was like performing a lot, which, at 16, 15, it's a little more difficult to find places when you don't really understand how that whole thing works. Right. But I guess I should mention in 8th grade, I had a science teacher who knew I was really into music. And at the end of the year, she was like, I have a present for you. I'm going to bring it for you in a couple of days. She brought an old 80s Tascam. I think that's the brand. Tascam, I think.
That's a brand,
yeah. She brought an old 4-track recorder that recorded on cassette tape for me. And she was like, I want you to have this.
That's really cool.
So after that, it was like, I even have tapes still with like...
That's a good teacher.
Recording. Yeah, she was awesome. My science teacher. She was really cool. I don't remember her name, but she brought me that tape recorder and I used that all throughout high school. There was like I said, there's tapes of me like sitting in my parents' basement at like 3 a.m, like playing. I think one of my favorite ones is I dug one up and I was like singing this like broody song about darkness and stuff and like, existential crises that 17-year-olds experience. Yeah, nothing's changed, just more subtle. But like, I remember there's one point I'm sitting in the basement playing and singing and like you can hear this door creaking open and my mom going, Eric, it's 3 a.m. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, you messed up my recording. And like the sound of it clicking off.
I tell you what I'm doing now. I'm re-recording what you just messed up.
I want to find that just to like show people. I was like that weird kid. I like played so much. I practiced all the time. Like any time I wasn't, like studying for school, which wasn't very much. I was a bad student. I was like playing. I would like show up and like bring my guitar stuff and I would just like sit outside and play until security came and told me to like go to class, and I would just like leave and go hang out.
Because you were a bad student is why you were a good musician.
Yeah, it was in a really weird roundabout way. Don't listen to me, kids. But really though, it really like, it just was so much of my time and it was just so important to me, which is really funny because, earlier I said it was just such a big part of my image, but, I feel like being a decent guitar player was also part of that. There were like, I think 3 or 4 really good guitarists at my school. And, it was just like everyone kind of knew it, in different groups and circles and stuff. They would like know who those, handful of guitarists were. And I was one of them. I was like, I got to keep that image up. But it was also just like really fun. I just really enjoyed playing that much and practicing and just like getting better.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like, in terms of the practicing, like, obviously you were playing a lot. Was there, like, any sense of structure to it at all? Or certain things you would try and, like, work out? Did you make time for, like, techniques? Or, how did all that work?
It's hard to say because I drank and smoked a lot of pot back
Drank pot. Oh, that's interesting.
Drank and smoked a lot of pot.
Yeah.
I drank pot.
Yeah. And then
No,
smoked
so a lot of it's just kind of like, I think a lot of it was just me writing my own songs, just kind of experimenting with sounds.
So at that point, that's most of your time is writing.
Writing, and like learning a lot of like Led Zeppelin and The Who and Jimi Hendrix, stuff like that. So the approach was really just like what I wanted to make sounds with.
Yeah.
Like what was like, I'd be like, I really like the way this sounds. I would like learn it, or like, if something like struck me at that point, that's when I started realizing, not so much when I was younger with my guitar teacher, it was like, okay, that's new. Then at that point, it was like, I like the way this sounds. I'm going to do this.
So then the techniques and stuff was still at that point just a matter of, did it show up in the song, and then you would do it when it came up, or learn it when it came up?
I feel like I actually got a pretty good shellacking of technique in those lessons, that everything that I was learning and was able to learn was already covered.
Gotcha.
A lot of. And that's kind of what limited me up into my later teens and early 20s, is kind of the lack of like certain technique things and like certain terminology even that kind of prevented me from advancing. And, getting into my later teens and early 20s is after high school a lot is when I kind of started learning more. I moved to the mountains and I met a guy named Franklin Brown from North Carolina, like from the Appalachians. He's just this really old, like super cool guy. And the people I were living with brought me up there to go play for him. And I remember the first thing he said to me, I like played with him. He like looked at my friend. He was like, "What the fuck? Where'd you get this fucking kid from?" He like looked at me. He was like, "Fuck you." But all right, where I come from, that's a good thing, the way I said it.
How old were you at that time?
I was 19, so this is late teens. And, I was just playing what I knew. It was a lot like blues, gypsy jazz stuff was still really good for me at that point.
Yeah.
But he was really into bluegrass and finger picking, and I never really had a lot of experience with that stuff. Maybe like Classical Gas and like Stairway to Heaven and, like, what is that bop?
Fourier.
Yeah, like the beret, all that stuff. Like that was like a handful of finger picking things, but like when I watched him play, he was like doing that kind of Travis picking stuff.
Right.
And like it just struck me so much. I was like, this is really fucking cool. And so over the next like year, I kind of spent time I hung out with him, and he kind of showed me a lot more finger picking stuff and just kind of different music from different places. I'd never really gotten into like bluegrass or like outlaw country music, and he just like really got me into that. And that's kind of when violin came into the picture too. Mm-hmm. He was also a violin and mandolin player, and I remember him playing for me. I was like, man, that's really cool. Like I'd never thought about playing violin before that. Never even considered it. It was just so far out of the realm of things I'd like been into from like in any of the punk music I listened to and classic rock. It was just like,
although there's a little appearance at the end of Bob O'Reilly.
Bob O'Reilly, I was just about to say that. That was probably like, that little fiddle part is like probably the most exposure extended. Stefan Grappelli, of course, obviously from Django Reinhardt, but it was just something that was so far beyond me. It was just like, there's no fucking way. And I just remember, him showing that stuff to me, and it just like kind of stuck with me. And, after that time, finger picking really did become a lot of my playing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I got into like rockabilly, a lot of like, country musics and stuff like that. And just like learning how to use more of my hand and just like certain techniques that I'd never really thought of using, a lot of things, like country licks and chicken pick and stuff like that. Right. And then a lot of things changed after I moved back to Denver. I started hanging out with...
Oh, so you were actually living in the mountains?
I was living in the mountains for about a year and a half. Okay. I think it was about a year more, close to. But then I moved back and I started hanging out with this girl that I dated in like late high school and stuff. And she was really like into punk rock music. And that's when kind of like punk rock became a resurgence in my life in my like early 20s. And then this is like the next groundbreaking. I think this is probably what just gave me the largest musical awakening. My brother went to go see System of a Down. And I'm a little ashamed to admit how late in my life I found out about this band, not System of a Down.
The Mars Volta.
No.
Oh, okay.
He went to go see System of a Down in like 2012, I think, I want to say. or 2011. I don't remember exactly when it was. It was like early 20 teens. And he went to go see System of a Down at Fiddler's Green, and he like was just blown away by this band that opened up for him. And he was like, "You're gonna fucking love this band. They're called Gogol Bordello."
Oh, fuck yes.
I'd never heard about them before that, and he was like, "You're gonna fucking love these guys." And I just remember he put on what was the song? It was Wanderlust King.
Yeah. I'm a Wanderlust King.
One. And I just was like, what in the ever-loving fuck? So, Gogol Bordello came into the picture, and thus Eric's life was changed.
How old were you at that time, would you say?
20, I want to say either 21 or 22.
That's about the first time that I heard about him, too.
Which is odd because I guess I wasn't into punk rock music as I thought I was, but like, they came about, and it was just like, everything changed.
Yeah.
That was like me discovering, that was like the effect of globalism in the world coming to a head in my life. Like this mixture of punk rock music and like traditional gypsy music and like reggae and dub and all these things that they did. And it was just like, holy shit, what am I missing?
Yeah.
What have I been missing in the world? Like it really, like, so many things were just like completely neglected because of my love for like classic rock, which is great. Yeah. I'm really happy I had that experience because I feel like I wouldn't be able to access it intellectually as much as I was able to, just because a lot of like the classical rock stuff was pretty informed music. You know, if you really look at it, it wasn't like really simple stuff in its own way. But Gogol Bordello changed everything. That's when I just like started really getting into like trying to experiment with different sounds. And I'd always had a thing for gypsy music, Django Reinhardt, of course, but not like that.
Even like traditional stuff.
Yeah, that's like, you know, Ukrainian, Russian, like Slavic. Folk music, Slavic folk music and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think like maybe less than a year after that, I went to actually go see them play at the Ogden. And I was just like enamored. They were so amazing, so cool.
I haven't seen them live, but I've seen a few YouTube clips, like performance. They put on a show.
If you can ever catch them, it's just energy and just like amazing. And their violin player, I'd been like paying attention to their violin players. This old Russian dude, big white beard. He probably was in the KGB. I don't know, probably not. Anyways, old Russian dude, just fucking mind-blowing. And I was just like so fascinated by that style of violin. It was like sort of like Stefan Grappelli in a way. It was really like windy and like really beautiful and melodic, but the way he did it was so aggressive and so like, it's gypsy punk. It was like cool. He broke his violin bow and he like threw it out into the crowd, and I like fought people for a piece of it, and I grabbed the bow. And I remember, you know, now Facebook was a thing, so you can like go back in time, and like I remember seeing like, you know, that year I went and it was like, man, Gogol Bordello was awesome. I got a piece of Sergei's bow. And then like the next day, literally the next day, it was like, I just bought a violin. I literally like,
gotta do this.
I just had all this money saved up, and I went to Music Go Round and I bought a violin. And it was just like, I played nonstop. It was like discovering my love for music all over again. And that's kind of when guitar fell a little more out of favor, just because violin just became so important.
Yeah.
It was just another one of those things that was just obsessive. Hours. I would like drag it with me to work, and I would like take my breaks and I would go outside and play. I would like play it on my walk back home. It was like almost weird how much I played. It was very obsessive. Yeah. And I would just, this is when YouTube got a little more popular, so I kind of used a lot of YouTube videos, and when I'd go visit the mountains, I'd visit Franklin, and he would like show me some like bluegrass stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of started informing my guitar playing also, because it was like, in a way, it was like, well, I got to make sure I stay up on both of them. And it would like, well, how would I do this on guitar? Or how would I do this thing on guitar and violin? And it was like starting to cross. Yeah, exactly. And trying to figure out what was different about them and what was similar enough about them. But guitar playing just kind of almost fell out of favor. I didn't fall out of favor. I still played a lot, but after about a year or so of playing violin, I was decent enough that I can also make an impression on people. And that's when I started playing live gigs. I got...
So at this point, what, still early to mid-20s or so?
Early 20s, 22 or 23. I think more 22. I was approached by a friend who I'd met at a show by a band called Starfucking Hipsters, which is like an anarchist like punk band from New York. You know, it was like an underground DIY venue, and like we really connected over a lot of stuff out here in Denver. It was called Blastomat. I believe it's called Seven Circle Music Collective now.
Okay. Yeah.
So we went to that. It was like one of the last shows. Blastomat did his Blastomat, and like I met him there, and he was just like, you know, super like excited to hang out with me and stuff. And like a few months later, he was like, "Hey, I want to start like a fucking gypsy ska punk band and folk and stuff, and I know you play violin." So I went to go hang out, and it was like fucking 4 dirty punk kids and me, and it was just a stinky basement. We just like ratted away this music like a fucking tattered group of like stinky people. It was great. It was so much fun, and that was like my first introduction into performing live. I would start playing with that band, I think like a few months after that.
And before that, the only thing was jazz band. And
it was jazz band, really, and like I think there'd been like a few like small scattered gigs here and there, like, hey, come play this thing, you know. And it was never really a big thing. It was never like a band. That band was called Blind Man Deaf Boy, and that was like the first time I had consistent gigs. We started getting a little following, you know, in like the Denver and Boulder folk punk scene and stuff like that. We played, I don't even know how many shows we played. After a while, we played like a show a week.
Really?
And it was a lot of underground shows, a lot of like DIY venues and like house shows and stuff like that. And, you know, we toured to the Southwest a couple of times. And a lot, like I said, it was just a lot of violin. And throughout that time, guitar was never really that important.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Is it kind of like you just done what you needed to do with guitar at that time, and that violin was just
I feel like
so much more interesting to you and appealing?
I remember like really thinking like, I don't think I could get any farther with guitar. I'm like already good enough. There's not really any way I can grow from
Which is
here.
funny considering where you're at now.
Right, you know, and like thinking back, it's insane. Like thinking how wrong I was, just because I think I wasn't willing to get more help. I was just like, you know what, like there's no way I can get really beyond this point unless I like really, really like pursue it. And so violin was just like, I can keep following this. I can keep growing pretty quickly on this instrument.
Well, before violin came into the picture, did you ever have any moments with guitar where you're like setting it down and not coming back to it for a little bit? Or
that was around the same time I started taking interest in violin.
And even before then, like throughout high school?
No. That really didn't start happening until like my
not even for like short periods of time, for like a week. Like, screw this thing.
I think the only time I've never gone more than 4 days in a row without playing any instruments is when I had to stay in jail for 30 days.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, that's the only time.
And you were tapping on the bar cells.
Oh God, I was writing music and I was like making drums and like imagining what I can do with like the things I was doing before I like had to go in. But like I've never ever laid an instrument down for more than like 3 days. It is like unfathomable for me to like imagine a week without playing something.
Yeah.
So no, guitar really didn't start kind of becoming less prevalent for me until like early 20s when the violin kind of became a thing, and I was like looking at other instruments and trying to like learn what other instruments I could play. And when the violin came along, it was just like, oh thank God, it was just an excuse to like avoid guitar because I was just like scared I wasn't going to grow anymore. And I really started getting back into it when I realized, you know, maybe this whole like the punk band thing was great, but it was just kind of like just felt really stagnant doing that and just like really stale, even just like playing in that situation. And I was
you
like,
mean like musically, or you mean performance wise?
Like musically, performance wise, I just like, and it wasn't like because I felt like I was better than musicians in my band. I just like, it was just that drive to want to do more. It was the same thing that
you
like
outgrew it.
Yeah,
just
in a way,
like
direction,
not a better direction, just a
different direction.
Yeah,
it was just like it's the same thing that happened with guitar. I kind of like in a sense outgrew it, and I was like, I want to do more. And you know, I was fortunate enough that a lot of my family, like I said earlier, were musicians, and so they were really supportive of me doing things. And you know, I was like, I think I was about 23 when I just like it just dawned on me. I was like, I need to do more. I need to go to school. I need to go to school for music.
Speaking of the family and stuff like that, did you have siblings that played at all?
No.
Are you an only child?
No, my older brother didn't really play much. I think I played instruments for him. If anything, like he tried to play drums and stuff. My dad played drums.
Oh, okay.
So my dad bought a drum kit when I was like 16, and you know he would like play. We never really played together, but you know he would play.
You'd hear it.
Yeah, I would hear him playing stuff like that, and he was like really into like classic rock, like I was. You know, half the records that are in my record collection over there are his. But you know, I was the only real like musician in my immediate family. My grandpa played trombone. I think my cousin played violin. I had another cousin who played piano. But like it's all my mom's family that were mostly musicians.
Yeah.
But you know, eventually my parents were just super supportive because I was like working at a liquor store and I was like still kind of like bumming around. I'd, you know, go like kind of crash couches and stuff and disappear for a few days and just like come back, and it was just like I had no direction. Eventually I was just like bored. I just got really bored, and I was like, I need to grow, and I decided to take the GED I earned after dropping out of high school and go to community college, and I started the music program. I didn't even start on guitar there. It was, again, just theory stuff. I thought I wanted to go in for composition, and after 2 semesters there, they were like, we don't really offer a lot more. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, can I transfer over to Metro? And they're like, yeah. So I like went to Metro and I transferred there. You know, I took more music theory, and then after a while they were like, you have to pick something that you want to do. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can like stick on violin and I can like do classical violin. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't know if I want to do that. And I was like, you know, maybe this is a good time to pick guitar back up and take it seriously. And I think I was about 23 still. And I remember auditioning for the jazz.
Happened in those early times.
Yeah, a lot happened. There was a lot. Like I said, Gogol Bordello really like was like opening the floodgates.
Yeah.
And just so much growth in like a matter of like 3 years. But I just remember auditioning for the program, not really knowing much. I could barely read music. I'd have to like sit down. I couldn't sight read. And I didn't really know anything about jazz besides Django Reinhardt and Wes Montgomery. And I didn't even say that name earlier, but that was like another one of those guitar players. I was like, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
But I just auditioned and I got in. And then after that, it was just like I started taking it very, very seriously and just like studying more, and like technique became a lot more important, like especially tonal production on guitar, you know, which is a matter of like where to pick certain picking techniques, or like certain left-hand techniques that can produce certain effects. Things like that became a lot of focus for me. And
so at that stage, now that you're picking back up guitar and everything, what would you say is like the thing that was either previously or in that moment became your biggest struggle with guitar? What was the thing that would you say was the hardest?
I'd say the hardest thing on guitar for me, sight reading was a big one.
Okay.
And that is a suggestion I will make to any guitarist. Like, learn how to sight read as soon as possible. It's such a useful and beneficial tool. And if you plan on doing any music seriously and a lot of like really, really professional settings, unless you're lucky enough to like catch a break and be a rock star, you will need to sight read. You will need to know how to sight read or have some capacity to read music pretty well. But another one of those things was being able to take direction and really take it to heart and really understand what the people who were teaching you wanted you to do with it.
So there was nothing like in a physical regard with the guitar, like, oh man, I just really struggled with bar chords, or I really struggled with this technique or anything. Was there anything particular like that ever struck you?
Not really. You know, speed has always like been one of those things that was kind of difficult, but
yeah,
like I said, I had been playing about 10 years before that, and so a lot of like technique stuff was just already like, I never really had issues like trying to figure out how to get my hands to do certain things. It was just a matter of me like sitting there and shedding stuff and just like, okay, well, how do I like do this legato technique properly, and like how do I make sure to play, you know, like this slide properly into these things. Or at that point it was literally just the theory of music, and like especially jazz theory, and just like learning how to navigate things like a jazz guitar player, which to this day I'm like, I literally just called my current partner and I just like bitched to her about how much I feel like I haven't grown as a jazz player, just because it's like the next thing that I struggle with, I feel like is important to address, is how much information is inputted to you and how difficult it is to display your ability to like use it properly. I've learned so much in these last 4.5 years.
You got to be able to retain it, and then you have, after that fact, you have recall ability. Right? Just how fast can you recall it, and then you have like the actual application of like, when does it belong? When is it appropriate? When is it kind of innovative to do this? Like, oh, that might not be typically appropriate, but this could be really cool.
Exactly.
Here.
Like, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's just such a like task to like really conceive all of these things, like you just said, and just like properly do it. It's so like, it's still so difficult. Like, I'm preparing for my senior recital right now, my final recital for my degree, and like I just performed yesterday you know, as I told you earlier, for my professors and stuff. And like, I got my notes today, and it was just like so many weird, like, you know, don't play so diatonically. It's like, well, maybe that's what like you guys told me when I got here. You know, use more like altered dominance, and you know, like use more chromatic notes, and like, you know, use whole tone scales over like dominant chords and stuff like that. And like, it's just after like learning so much, it's like, right, I know that. I'm not stupid. Like, I've known I should do that. It's just so much information in the moment when you have like one chorus, you know, you have 32 bars of music. It's like, how much can you actually recall? It's like I watch my professors play. It's like, holy shit, you guys have been doing this so long, but it's just like so natural for them. Like, maybe eventually I'll get to that point where it's just like this almost second nature, but like I still have to actively think about all these things I've learned, and I revert to like playing diatonically, as they said, you know, just because like it does sound good, and I know how to like navigate things a little bit easier when it's like that, not have to worry about, you know, substituting, you know, chords, you know, tritone subs and things like that, or like, you know, like substituting modal scales for different things.
As a reference, if somebody wants to look into it so they can get a gauge of like what we're the kind of thing we're talking about here, what was that Mahavishnu piece specifically? Miles Beyond, I believe. Mahavishnu Orchestra.
By Mahavishnu Orchestra from their Birds of Fire
and that
album.
You did have to do some improvising over, right?
I do, and it is so weird.
So that is the context for which we're talking about. So if you listening and you want to check it out to get an idea of like what kind of, you know, what kind of demand it has on your playing ability, it's weird stuff. You know, I mean, Mahavishnu's always been a little bit out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess, you know, the only other thing that I'm curious to know, because that kind of brings you to where you are now, right? I mean, you literally just did your jury.
It's the pinnacle.
Yesterday.
It's the pinnacle of, it is the collective of everything I've done to this, like literally, like this moment. It couldn't have been any less this moment, like 24 hours ago.
Right.
Like almost exactly.
And that's when you had to do that Mahavishnu thing amongst other pieces as well.
Right, yeah.
So I'm curious, like, you know, I was asking about like the struggles and stuff. Like, was there anything even in your more formative years with guitar that you're just like, that you just kind of got stuck on? Like, and also like, for instance, there are things that you just don't even know exist. You know what I mean? At the time, because especially back then when the internet wasn't quite as accessible.
Right. Anything I got stuck on.
Yeah, where you're just, you know, like bar chords are a pain for people sometimes, you know, or just... or like you talked about the two-hand tapping thing. Like, how did you even discover something like that?
You know, it was just kind of like knowing it existed at first. I think the first thing which is really weird. I feel like people are going to think I'm lying when I say this, but like the first thing I did with like two-hand tapping was like, just like kind of patterns.
Oh, okay. It's like some Van Halen type stuff. Gotcha.
I didn't even hear Eruption before that.
Okay.
It was just like such a natural thing to do.
You figured that out on your own. There was nothing that...
Maybe I'd like heard it on the radio and I kind of just like it just like came about, but I remember like going into my lessons and like you know, because my professor, like my teacher at the time had like showed me like some two-hand tapping stuff. He was like, well, this is how you do it. You tap with your right hand, then you like move your left hand through it and you can come back to it. And you know, like I said, I'd gone back home and messed with it, and like that was like the first thing I kind of just did with it. And then I showed him, I was like, hey, check this thing out I can do. And he was like, oh, it's like Eruption. I was like what? And, you know, he like showed me Eruption. I was like, whoa, what? I thought I was like being all innovative and shit. It was like, so I never tell that story anywhere because it always feels like such a fucking phony lie. But I mean, it's really like, even to this day, I still remember exactly what I did for him. And it is Eruption. Like that's that one part in Eruption. But it was just like those four positions of it. Excuse me, it was like a demon inside me.
Well, you know, there's part of the reason I do these interviews is because, you know, there's a lot of people out there trying to learn guitar, and it's just something like you said. I think it's kind of the same thing like you said with violin, where it just seems something that was so far off, like, geez, I don't know if I could ever do that, you know? And for me, like that, like keyboards, it always felt that way to me. It was definitely something that didn't come as easily. The ambition was there and everything, but it was just something that didn't come nearly as easy as guitar or other stringed instruments. And I think a lot of people do feel that way with guitar as well. So, you know, with these interviews, I'm talking to these different people that have all gone from knowing absolutely nothing to the point where they're using it at a high level, at least in a level that's high enough to where they're able to go out and perform with it and do the things they set out to do when they were young and inspired to do these things. They had these goals when they were younger, and now they're doing those things, right? So they were able to get at least that far with it. And there's other people, out there that are in that beginning stages or somewhere within the learning process, and they kind of get a little demotivated, or they're just kind of wanting to understand, what's next, or what things are really necessary, And one of the things that, there's many things. Like, for one, you were surrounded by people that did music, and that's a big thing, right? Because you just know, you see it. It's like when Tony Hawk landed the 900, and then everybody landed the 900 after. You see this as possible. Yeah. So then it's, if you don't know anybody else that does it, it's like, I don't even know where to begin with something like that. I don't know if this is possible. Well, if he did it, that's my buddy. Well, then I could do it too, right? So that's a big thing. And then, the lessons is very, I don't even know if 50-50 is a good number. I think more people probably don't take lessons initially, or even if they do, it's a very, very, very short time. But while it can be very helpful, it can also be hurtful if you don't have the right teacher, I'd say. It can ruin the experience for some people.
It really can.
But a good teacher can also make for a very great experience, and you had that. And I did
very
too.
Fortunately, yeah.
So that definitely can be a very good thing. And another big thing was technology. You had that Tascam recorder, and I imagine that was such a big thing in the learning process. I'm sure you learned a lot out of doing that.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, because you get to sit down, you can record something and then try something over it, and you can record something and just improvise over it, but it's your thing now.
Yeah, I no longer needed any other people to help me.
Right.
Which that self-sufficient, that became kind of an issue, because I stopped relying on other people for music. I feel like that's kind of why I never really continued with ensemble playing throughout high school. It's just like, why the fuck do I need anyone else? I got this.
One of the things that is a little bit more unusual is you did start off playing music with other people. That's another huge thing. But there was a pretty long period there where you didn't.
Very long.
However, it came back in pretty full force, especially once you were doing the fiddle in that gypsy punk type band.
Yeah.
Punk band.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely a big thing. And in terms of, being able to learn, and I think, at the end of the day, no matter which one of those things, how helpful any of those things are, whether that somebody has access to one of those things, at the end of the day, the biggest thing is just putting in the time. And you played so much. You just couldn't put it down.
Right now I'm noodling.
Yeah, right.
I'm not even
funny enough, you're the only person actually in any of these interviews that's actually been holding onto the guitar doing it.
It's like 11 right now. It's like a habit for me to this is what I do. When I'm at home, I sit, either in that chair over there, I sit over the guitar pedals, or I just grab my mandolin, I just put on a show or something, and I just kind of I don't even really play anymore. I should probably be a little more focused in my practice, but I just noodle. I'm complaining about my fingertips always hurting lately, and I've just been realizing I literally barely ever put this guitar down. I need to force myself to go out to avoid practicing, because I'm actually causing damage to my hands. I've been getting a lot of really bad right hand issues, and my fingertips on my left hand have been really sore, inconsolably sore. I tried to super glue them to get past kind of how sore they're getting, which has never been an issue in the last 10 years. But it really is just a matter of just not even devotion, just obsession almost. Yeah. And I really wish I was more obsessed in the right way, and I feel guilty taking the things my professor showed me and just really practicing that way. Just at this point, it's keeping my chops up, and I feel now that I'm at the end of this degree, I really will have more time to focus on taking all this stuff and using this time that I sit here at 10 to midnight, that I just sit here and just keep my chops up and just play lines over and over again until my fingers hurt. And now I can actually take these things they've shown me and just actually do something with them.
Right.
Because I think that was the one thing my piano player for my senior recital quartet said to me. It was the first time we'd really hung together, and he's also he's an alum from that same university that I'm graduating from, and he's just one of the most phenomenal piano players. Solomon Chapman, great piano player, just mind-blowingly good. And he was complimenting me on, he's man, it's a lot of fun to play with you. You have a really good energy, you're just very enthusiastic, and you got great chops. And then I was just but there's not a lot of context behind what I'm playing. And he was because it's I kind of know how to navigate songs like a jazz player, but I still don't. It's just so much. And I'm not gonna lie, I've never really been into jazz. Like, I fucking hate The Real Book. There's very few songs in there. Like, there's a handful of things I really like about it, but just like, I would rather find something like the Mahavishnu Orchestra stuff, or like, I was telling you about the Ben Allison Quartet, just like, or Bad Plus. The Bad Plus, you brought up the Bad Plus. Like, that stuff is like so much more visceral and so much more, like, fun to me, and just like, it just seems so much more effective musically.
It's probably that abstractness that attracts you.
In a way, I think it is, just because it's not like I'm trying to be out and just like, think like, oh yeah, I'm beyond all this stuff. It's just like, it's what appeals to me more.
Yeah.
And it's not because of like the experiences. I grew up like listening to fucking classic rock and Django Reinhardt, which isn't the most like out music. And I listen to like punk rock, which, I mean, it can be, but I didn't even like get into like weird punk music, like, like as shit at the drive-in was doing, or like there's this band, the Blood Brothers, like really, really like interesting arty shit, and I didn't really get into that until I was like in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So it's like there was never really that, avant-garde approach to music that I really started getting into till now, and I wouldn't even call it avant-garde. That's such a like pretentious term to use, but just like this more untraditional approach to music. And now that I'm finally like getting to that point, I'm like, I can very easily say like, I like jazz. I do love certain jazz musics and like certain eras of it, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to. But it's at the same time, it's just like,
yeah, you're not an avid jazz guy, just listening to it all the time, just loves it no matter what. Like those, like, you got those guys that are just like, I love the blues. That's all I listen to. I just listen to the blues. Doesn't matter what it is.
It's just like, I like the blues. Like, just like, I like jazz. It's like,
you like select pieces, select artists.
Like select eras.
You identify with, based on what they're doing.
It's like, a good example is just like so many college students bitch about this in jazz departments everywhere, I'm sure. Charlie Parker and bebop. Bebop music. It's just like, no one like sits there and is like, oh yeah, I fucking love bebop. I love just sitting there listening to bebop music. Like it's like fucking 350 BPMs, just like lines for days, and just like, it's just like, and it's like, no one listens to that for fun. No one like is like, yeah, I'm into this. Like, we like sit there and we like slow it down by 50% to like really look at it. And it's like, bebop is like way cooler when it's half the speed it is, because it's like, damn, that was like really cool what they're doing. But it's just kind of like, that's my same thing about jazz. Like, sometimes I like listen to it, and at first it like takes me a minute. I'm just like, okay, well, this is cool. Like, and there are certain, like, I'm not gonna lie, there are certain jazz songs that just like hit me. Like, one of the songs I'm doing on my recitals, Round Midnight by Thelonious Monk. And it's like, if you can just take every neo-noir movie from like the 1940s and put it in a piece of music, so it's got like the Harmon mute trumpet, the specific version I'm talking about is a Miles Davis version of it, and he uses his Harmon muted trumpet for it, and John Coltrane solos on it. But it's just like, you can like almost imagine a dingy jazz club when you hear it, and it's just like, that's really cool to me. Like that.
It takes you somewhere.
It takes you somewhere, and like, not a lot of jazz music will do that for me. Some things will, like, sometimes it'll just be like the weirdest cheesy thing, and I'll just be like, wow, that saxophone solo really hit me. Then sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, this is fucking whack. And I'm the same way with rock music too, or anything.
Well, to bring it kind of to a close, ultimately now you're teaching yourself, as I mentioned earlier. You are a teacher now.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that for?
At a studio, about 3 years.
Okay.
And then, as, individual, probably about another 2 years beyond that. Yeah. So, like, about 6 years, give or take a few months.
Last thing, I mean, we pretty much, like, touched on everything, whether I specifically asked or not, that I wanted to talk about. And the last thing is, as far as teaching goes, and that relating to your own personal learning and growing as a musician, what ways would you say you have gained your increase in ability and just knowledge as a player through teaching?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like I have to be less hypocritical, for one. but I also feel like I can say certain things to my students because I do put in a lot of time on my instrument, and I have. And, you know, when I was some of those kids' age, because it's mostly primarily like very young, like I think my youngest student's like 6 through like 14, I think is my oldest student. So they're very young.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I was like 13 and playing, like I literally did nothing else. And I kind of like think about these kids as like, is this not fun for you? Is this like
the only time they pick it up is when they're at the lesson or something?
Yeah, you know, and it's just like, you guys, like, why aren't you doing more? Like, is this not something you guys want to do? Like, do you actually really like this? I'm like, yeah, no, it's great. And it's like, well, why aren't you doing it more?
Yeah, right.
It's like really obvious, but
why are you not obsessed?
You know, and it's not like I'm not, you know, harshing anyone for it. It's just like, I think it's just weird for me because like I literally was like just freakishly obsessed. Like you can talk to anyone in my family, my brother, my mom, and they'll just be like, oh my God. Like they had to learn how to tune me out because I would just be like sitting there practicing while we were eating dinner, you know, and like we'd be like watching TV and stuff late night after dinner and I'd still be practicing and I would like be up at 3 a.m. in the basement practicing.
Yeah.
It was just like always such an easy thing. And like that, back to the question, back to, you know, what I took away from teaching, I have learned to be less critical of people for the level of interest they take in things. And how that influenced my playing is everyone experiences music differently. Everyone experiences how they approach it and how they feel about it differently. And it's really helped me in a lot of ways not get upset with myself when things aren't coming along like they need to. It's important for me, especially as a teacher, just like how much growth I can like see and like knowing the worth and how far I've come myself. And then, you know, not only like that is just like when I can't do something for my students, I'm like, wow, shit, I should probably like shed that. You know, I should probably like sit there and learn that so I don't look like an idiot next time.
Right.
And the thing is about
There's a certain demand that comes with it.
Yeah. And you know, when I started playing, it was always kind of about impressing them to make sure they knew I was like worthy of teaching them.
Sure.
And now, you know, like, especially after being in a studio where you have to like sit there and do these things, now it's like, I barely pick up instruments when I'm with my students.
Yeah, you as well, yeah.
Like I need to like, if I need to show them something that is like, you know, how to hold the instrument, then yeah. Or if I need to like, kind of like show them how their body needs to be, then yeah, I'll like pick it up. But like, I think I didn't even like pick up my violin once last time because all those kids know after a few, you know, lessons with me, they know how they need to hold the instrument. They know how to do that. At that point, it's just me coaching them on things they need to do. You know.
So do you have this ability to kind of, now that you're seeing these kids in these brand new positions as you once were when you are struggling yourself now, to kind of like almost look at yourself as like your own teacher and how you might react to yourself if you were your teacher, like if you were two separate people?
You know, no, I don't really think I've never really looked at it that way.
Really? Like, because, you know, like as you're, because, you know, you do take it very seriously in the sense where if you're struggling, that's very difficult for you in a sense, right? You don't want, I mean, you want to do so well.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating. Wow, I've never really kind of looked at it, you know, as kind of like being my own guiding light, because like I feel like, because my current guitar professor has been so important to me, Dave Devine. He is just like so influential, and especially, you know, his tastes in music and stuff like that. This is why I'm playing like Mahavishnu Orchestra stuff and like Bad Plus, and like, you know, Django Reinhardt was like such an important part of, you know, me studying this stuff. And like, I think I just like relied on him so much over these last 4 years, I kind of stopped the self-sufficient part of me that like kind of helped me learn how to play violin and kind of like got me through most of my teens. And, you know, now that I'm kind of like leaving his wing, you know, in this sense, and like going out into the world with all the stuff he's given me, I feel like maybe it might be like that again. Maybe I'll like kind of, you know, take my own advice, you know, and like take myself seriously and just be like, you know what, dude, like you've been through a lot, and like clearly you've gotten through college, you got a degree for this, maybe you should just like take it easy.
Which is more than a lot of people do, for sure, especially in the music realm.
Right. It's really hard to do. It's like such a, like, to let...
You did well at it too.
Right, to like take it seriously and not like get so critical. Like even today I like left performance class, like there's so many awesome fucking musicians at my school right now, and it's just like,
but the cool thing is none of them are you.
None of them are me, and it's great. And like I get so like I get envious because like my experience at this university has been a little less than what I wanted, and like I could have gotten a little more from it. Like I really wanted to play in certain ensembles, and I never really got the chance to do that. And you know, some of that envy comes from like, well, why do the other guitarists get to do that? But
and to clarify what I meant there, like none of them are you, I meant like none of them are ultimately going to put out, their output's never going to be what you output, because they're going to be their own selves, you're going to be your own self. So at the end of the day, you being the unique person that you are with the things that are unique to yourself, like your playing is never going to be able to be reproduced, and that right there is pretty freaking cool. Even if you don't reach the level, or are currently not at the level you'd like to be with something, you know that it's still unique to you.
Right.
You're putting it out in the way only you can put it out.
So hopefully it doesn't suck.
Well, you know, it's like that's always, I know that's kind of a joke, but at the end of the day too, that's always going to be subjective. So
yeah.
But one thing that is for sure is that it is uniquely you, which is one of the things that, you know, has always been a little bit of a struggle for me, especially with writing. It's like, you know, there's so many things that have been done before, and but at the end of the day, it's like this went through me and then came out. So this is me, even if there's the influences that it might kind of echo things that I liked, whatever. It's still, it's gone through my own filter. I gotta let it go. So, but I know you got an early morning, right?
I'm honest, I was probably gonna be up this late anyways.
Yeah. But that's really all I had to talk about anyway. So
I'm glad this happened.
Yeah, well, we got all the way to now, and usually, like I said, I don't go that far because it's more about like getting to the point where you can go out in the world, but you have just been constantly, like, very actively learning and growing.
It's been a very constant level of growth, and different. Yeah, it has been a very consistent. There's honestly, I can divide it into certain eras of my life within like a 3-year chunk. And every one of those 3-year chunks has been like some amount of growth or something different musically. So, I mean, I'm sorry if I took it too far going that way, but it's just really like, even after I leave this university, it's not going to fucking stop. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to stop. Like, I'm going to be like 50 years old, like, well, yeah, I'm good, but am I good enough?
It's just what you do.
I just started playing theremin. No, I'll probably get into theremin much earlier than that.
Well, that's funny because I was actually talking about that with my buddy the other day.
Oh, I love theremin. Yeah. I love it. I love all weird instruments.
All right, well, we'll leave it at that then. And definitely appreciate you sitting down and doing this. Like, personally, like, I don't even care if this thing's recorded. I just love talking about this shit.
No, this is fun. Like, like at some points I forgot we were recording until I like looked at the spike in volume when we laugh or like do something loud.
Our laughs peaked.
I have a very hearty guffaw.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I'm genuinely interested in, you know, because like I know what my experience is like, and of course as being a teacher too, like I know what other people's experiences would be like or have been like, and then just other people you talk to or friends that you've kind of been learning side by side with. It's really interesting to hear other people's experiences, but it's also really interesting to hear the parallels between the people that have been able to accomplish what they want to accomplish, you know, at least what they initially set out to accomplish, and goals and stuff as time goes on, but that have actually gotten there, as opposed to the people that are kind of like, you know, they give it a year or less even, and they're kind of like, I don't know. It's like, well, you want to know what it takes? Well, first of all, you got to put in the time. Make it obsessive, you know. You got a wife? Well, sorry. That's why we have divorce.
Sorry.
It's for being a good musician. That's why divorce has existed in the first place.
You know what though? Even no matter how many girlfriends I've had in the past, they've never gotten in the way of love for music.
Yeah,
I feel like that's why I've had so many, because they're like, oh, he likes that more than us. Well, yeah. Sorry I drew you in.
So what you liked about me now is what you want me to change, huh?
I don't think so. Not gonna work. Yeah. Not gonna work.
So, but yeah, cool, awesome, glad.
This has been really fun. This is actually like really, I always like doing these things because it's like it kind of reveals more to myself, because I'm like, oh wow, now I got to go back and listen to it and critique it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not therapy, obviously, but in a way, like therapy, you discover things about yourself, right? Just because you're talking about
therapeutic.
it. Yeah.
It is
therapeutic. So you just discover things just from simply talking about it, and obviously,
yeah.
We talked.
Well, it's nice enough to be comfortable, too. It's not like being in an awkward situation. It's like we're like very acquainted friends.
Yeah.
Or
I should
got
say,
a brotherhood.
You play with me in my band, Charlie Beaux and the Brilliant Band. So this is
slight mention.
Somebody that we have. I'm very close to in a musical sense too, like as opposed to some other people I've interviewed that I've not actually played with.
Literally from the moment we met.
Yeah, literally.
Until now, it's like,
and that's exactly like I literally pursued you for a year, like
for musical purposes.
Some like stalker girlfriend.
I'm fine with that.
Because when you get a musical connection, that's a unique thing, and I don't know if anybody else, like I don't know how often that happens for other people or whatever, but for me it's maybe it's because I'm picky, I don't know, but I just you just something you don't have control over.
You vibe certain people certain
it vibes or it doesn't,
and which is fortunate because even with our other band members, it's just like we all vibe.
Yeah,
I've not really played with too many bands where we're just like super chill, the handful of bands I am in, I'm like that because I'm also picky. If I don't like a situation, I'm just I won't give my heart to it. But like all these bands I've been in these last few years is just like the reason I stick around is just because like I don't want to stop playing with these motherfuckers. They're cool.
Yeah,
it's fun.
That's definitely the same thing on my end too, and it's funny that it kind of moved away when I finally had the perfect thing.
Oh, hey, just move back. It's not hard to do. Well,
all right,
how hard it is.
Peace out, world.
Let's close it out.
Bye.